Welcome to Peculiar Stories, where we explore the fascinating world of near-death experiences and offer new perspectives on the meaning of life and death. Our goal is to shed light on these profound stories, deepen your understanding of life, and provide valuable insights to our audience. Whether you're new here or simply joining us again, we're thrilled to have you on this journey. If you enjoy what we do, consider subscribing to our channel to stay updated on our latest content, and don't forget to hit the like button to help our content reach a wider audience. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be transported to the edge of life and beyond. Without further ado, let's get to the story. My name is Sandra Hubert. This is my near-death experience caused by drowning. The Rogue River rafting fear occurred on July 11, 2005. On the second day of a rafting trip, Friday, July 8, 2005, I was kayaking on the Rogue River in an inflatable kayak. This shallow kayak allows the passenger to sit almost on top of it, against an inflated pillow, rather than inside it. I was seated between the third and fourth six-passenger rafts of our journey. I had successfully kayaked through some rapids and was growing tired of it. On this section of the river, there was a lot of calm water between the rapids. I chose to stay in the raft for the next set of rapids before exiting the kayak and returning to the conventional raft. I couldn't approach the glacial rocks on the right side the manner I planned as we reached John's Riffle, level 2 rapid, because the strong river was pulling me left. My kayak flipped, and my body smacked into a massive glacier boulder, pinning me with my back against the rock and my face level with the surface rapids. The strong currents were drawing me further into the sea, while I fought with all my strength to get back up and take a breath of air. My kayak followed me into the boulder and struck me in the head before vanishing downriver. Fortunately, I was wearing a helmet, and my life jacket was properly adjusted before I began kayaking. The current was roaring, and swirling white water engulfed me from head to toe. I was crushed against a rock and couldn't see much through the rapids, but I was certain I knew which way was up to the sky. I could feel how powerful the current was as I struggled to reach the surface, and I was losing hope that my strength could compete with the water. But I persisted. The powerful water swept me under the first rock and around to my right side. It actually drew me around to the back face of that first enormous rock, pinned by the current and below air level, as I was afterwards told. I could see the sky, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get to the air. Even though the top of my head was only a few inches above the surface of the water current rushed over my face and I couldn't feel any air. I was trying to keep my cool and think things through. I couldn't believe how powerful the current was. I was starting to fear as I pushed against the rocks with all my power and couldn't move against the strong tide. I felt myself being slowly dragged down. Despite my best efforts, I was taken beneath the water again, this time through a tunnel under the second enormous rock. While I was being dragged beneath the rocks, I could hear bubbles and water noises. I was quite terrified. Throughout our walk, I had observed many caves leading beneath the rocks, but I had no idea where the river was carrying me. I was terrified of being drawn into a cave beneath the rocks, where I would get trapped and suffocate, but my strength was no match for the rivers, and I had no choice but to go where the water was taking me. I awoke on the surface between the second and third glacial rocks. My left leg jammed between the rocks, and I couldn't move my trunk. My right foot could feel the small point of a rock beneath me, and my right elbow could move a little, so I was pushing with my right foot and right elbow to get to the air. My foot kept slipping off as I pushed because it was pushing on the point of a rock. At this time, I was exerting all of my remaining power by extending my body as far as I could and tilting my head back as far as it would go. Although swallowing a lot of water, I was able to take extremely little breaths of air in between surges of water. I had my back to the main river, but out of the corner of my right eye, I noticed one of our rafts pass by the massive rocks. Someone in the front of the raft pointed at me, and then the raft vanished downriver. I remember being happy that I had been noticed, but I wasn't sure whether I could get enough oxygen to last till they returned. I opened my mouth to yell for assistance. When water suddenly poured into my mouth, I was able to yell, "Help me!" and was surprised at how panicked my voice sounded. It was almost as though the voice was coming from somewhere else. My shouts for aid became to gurgles as water filled my throat, and I realized immediately that I had made a grave error. I was starting to see stars, and my vision was getting darker. I was pleading with God to help me with all my strength. A picture of Cameron and Jared flashed in front of my face like a slideshow, but there was just one sepia-colored slide that appeared continuously. I knew it was a picture of my boys, but it was of them when they were older, perhaps in their 20s. I pleaded with the Lord to save me. I knew I was crying, but the water washed them away, and I couldn't feel them. I was in a panic as I pleaded with God to save me. I desperately wanted to live and was convinced that I was about to die. All I could do was hope that He had plans to save me. I didn't want to lose my children, and the prospect of doing so struck me with a terrible anguish beyond anything I'd ever felt. Lord, please don't let me lose my kids, I prayed. The anguish was overwhelming once more. I knew I was dying emotionally thinking about my boys. After repeating that prayer several times, I had a sudden realization and prayed, Lord, please don't let my kids lose me. That was an incredible turning point in my life, and I believe it was the first time I realized, probably for the first time, that I had self-worth. Everything went black, and I felt my body relax instinctively. As my body relaxed, I fought to stay conscious, but I was losing the battle as I was dragged deeper and deeper into the sea. Every hope of holding my breath or getting a fresh breath of air was quickly fading. I felt my body being dragged beneath the water, and then everything became black as night and utterly silent, with not a single sound. I could feel my body being forced through a tunnel, feet first and face down, as I banged between rocks, but there was no pain. I felt like I was being dragged by something, but there was nothing physical about it. It was more like awareness that something was happening. But I wasn't terrified as much as I was simply aware. I remember being struck by how quiet and black everything was. I can't put into words how peaceful everything was. Now I see why other people with similar experiences have remarked, I didn't want to come back. It was unlike anything I'd ever felt, and I don't think I'll ever feel at peace like that again until I die and leave this planet. I suppose I lost consciousness around that time since I don't recall going through the tunnel and rejoining the current. My body had evidently passed fully beneath the rocks and popped up on the river's surface some 30 yards downstream from my initial accident. I later learned that the guide who was attempting to rescue me stated that I was underwater for 3 to 4 minutes, and that he lost sight of my helmet for 20 to 30 seconds from my position between the rocks, implying that I was pulled through a long tunnel. I was floating down the river on my back at the time, but I was looking down at myself rather than enjoying what I was seeing. I could watch myself gurgle and cough out water, but it was quickly replaced by new waves of water, and I appeared to be choking while trying to breathe. From my vantage point, watching the water fill and float across my open mouth seemed strange, but I couldn't figure out why. It was like watching a movie in slow motion. I recall telling myself to try to relax and take slow, deep breaths. I knew I was meant to turn my body so that my feet were looking downstream and use my arms as ballast, but I didn't maneuver and couldn't figure out why I wasn't. My toes were visible above the water, but my arms were fully at the mercy of the rapids, hanging at my sides quite a little under the water. Although I was being tossed around a lot, I couldn't see anything from my physical body, and it seemed extremely calm as I floated down the river head first. I don't recall hearing or seeing anything, so I don't believe I was conscious at the time. I was only staring as the rocks and torrents pummeling my limp body. I was frightened about the girl not understanding it was me as I watched the water fill my mouth over and over. Keith, my guide, a paramedic and happily married father of 3, claimed he couldn't see my face because of the angle of the raft, but he believes I was unconscious. He said he flung his oar out in front of my face for me to hold, but my legs and arms were lifeless in the water like a rag doll. I don't recall seeing his oar. He was about to throw the tow rope to me, but he didn't think I'd be able to grab it or stay onto it. Evidently, the women in the raft were also too far away to catch me. The next thing I remember was being jerked about near our raft, but I had no idea who else was there or where we were. Keith had a grip of my vest near the back of the raft, one of the highest spots of the raft, and I watched from above. I wanted to tell him I could get around to the side and grasp the ropes on the side of the raft, but I couldn't control my physical self, and no words were coming out of my mouth. It was more of a mental communication. I recall my hands simply slapping the side of the raft rather than clutching anything as I was being dragged on, although it could have been because I was being dragged around by my vest. I believe I was fading in and out because I was conscious of finally being able to shift myself a little bit over to the right side of the raft, and Keith pulling me halfway into the raft. I was attempting to assist Keith in getting me into the raft, but my muscles were refusing to cooperate, and I observed myself flailing around. I was lying approximately halfway across a cooler and one of the inflated crossbars of the raft. My body was vomiting water, and I recall feeling humiliated and relieved that no food was coming out. Only water. Someone with an East Coast accent yelled repeatedly, "Take off her helmet, it might be cutting off her air." But it wasn't, and I thought she was being little unpleasant and panicked for nothing, because I was absolutely peaceful and didn't feel like I was even in my body at the moment. From the right side of the front of the raft, I was elevated above the activity. I was aware of what was going on, but I wasn't physically experiencing it. It's tough to describe. Keith was talking to me quietly the entire time, asking me to try to breathe. He told me I was doing great, and explained everything he was doing. "I'm going to unbuckle your vest now," he said. "I'm going to take your helmet off right now." I was still at ease and felt like I was either physically feeling myself being pulled around or emotionally experiencing what I imagined I should be physically feeling. I'm not sure. I was perplexed since I was seeing my own rescue from above. Keith's calm and professional demeanor was extremely beneficial to me because I couldn't move, but knew he was taking care of me. I recall lying there trying to recover some energy and thinking to myself after my helmet was removed, "Hey, my hair doesn't look that bad," which I later thought was a funny critique. I was suddenly back in my body, as if on order or as if someone had flipped a light switch. I sat up and attempted to grin and appear normal to calm everyone down, but I was gasping for air. I'd gotten into my body so quickly. I was nearly sorry I wasn't watching any longer. I hadn't worried about myself on the raft, and it wasn't until much later that I realized how important what I was observing was. The women on my own raft, as well as another of our surrounding rafts, gave me wide-eyed stares. I recall being concerned for individuals around me who appeared to be terrified, and I'm quite sure I kept assuring them that I was all right. Keith was looking to see if I had broken my leg or anything else when I awoke. When I looked down, I noticed deep red indents on my left shin and big bruises where my leg had been pinned against the rocks. My prescription sunglasses were smashed, which irritated me, and my sandal was halfway off my right foot. My arms and legs were scraped and bruised, but I realized I was extremely fortunate. I was nauseated, but the notion of barfing over the edge of the raft was too humiliating. I didn't break any bones, and I'm grateful I was wearing a helmet and PFD because things could have turned out much worse. I continue to feel uncomfortable and find fresh black and blue marks on myself as the days pass, but I grin when I see them because I know how fortunate I am to be here. After my incident, our raft was rather quiet. Gail, my good friend and next-door neighbor, was in another raft, and we exchanged glances. She appeared distressed. All of the rafts came to a halt a short distance later at a magnificent plot of land, with a historic barn building filled with vintage farm equipment and glass things. A couple of the raft guides went with me as we exited the rafts and strolled through the green field to the buildings, asking how I was doing and making sure I was okay. I tried hard not to cry, but it didn't take much to push me over the line. Very large tears flowed from deep within me, and I did that gasping thing that happens when someone cries really hard. I just told them it was really scary, but I'd be all right. "Are you sure because we can get you out of here?" They kept asking. "You are not required to finish the journey." I emphasized that I didn't want to cause any disruptions or ruin anyone's vacation. They assured me that those were the last of my concerns, but I claimed that I was well. Later, I noticed all of the guides standing together, having a serious chat, which I believed was about my mishap. I was in a trance as I walked through the buildings and kept to myself more than usual. I roamed about for a bit until coming upon a short white fence and berry bushes overlooking the river. I was psychologically and physically drained, and I was bawling my heart out. I was an emotional wreck, but I wanted to stay on the trip. I was able to take a shower at the next stop, where we would spend the night, and I don't think I've ever felt so relaxed after a shower. It's weird now to think that the finest shower I've ever had was in a frigid tin-floored shower with a torn plastic curtain and a cold air blowing in, but I was just relieved to be myself, standing beneath warm water where I could cry without anyone hearing me. I attempted to put on a brave face after I was clean and back with our group of around 25 people, but inside I was just breaking. That night, like everyone else, I had a few beers. I smiled and answered, "Yeah, I'm good, thank you," several times. The next morning, I put on my brave face and prepared to go swimming. My legs and arms were aching and turning bright red. When I spotted a few of the younger women sneaking glances at me and then discussing, I felt self-conscious. Normally, I was the first in line for any adventure, but on this particular day, I saw that I kept allowing others in front of me to board the rafts. On this particular day, I paid close attention to the river. I had rafted a significant portion of the earlier legs of the trip without my life vest because the water was calmer, but I had that thing strapped so tight that every time I took a breath, I felt some excellent pressure. It made me feel more secure. Never in my life have I felt more terrified than when I was trapped between the last two rocks. I don't remember ever praying with such seriousness as I did at that time. I've always loved my children with all my heart, but I don't think I've ever loved them more than I did during those times when I feared I might be dying. I am certain that the Lord saved me that day. In the days after our vacation, I talked to Keith a lot about the experience. Although he knows the rogue well, he has no idea how I got from point A to point B that day. He claims my yellow helmet, which was all he could see when he spotted me, simply vanished and then reappeared downriver, much to his delight. My only answer is that the Lord saved me. I'm certain of it. My life will never be the same again, and I am so grateful that I survived that I can't even express how grateful I am. Watch this near-death experience next about a man who left heaven for his mom's sake and get back to Earth. He also was told the truth about guardian angels and stars.